Thanks, Sophie. Coming up tonight on BBC London. As the government confirms all 58 recommendations from the Grenfell inquiry will be met, survivors and the bereaved call for changes and regulation to be brought in much more quickly.
We will honour the memory of those who lost their lives by bringing about meaningful change in their name, change that will make life better for everyone.
All of these recommendations need to go out for further consultation, further review, and it's very painful for us to understand how long that process is going to take.
Also on the programme. A year until the sinkhole is fixed, Surrey families are warned they won't be able to go home for months. Plus, protesters against expansion plans at Gatwick gather at the airport ahead of a government decision on its new runway.
And join me later to see the night sky illuminated as London's West End is lit up to celebrate ahead of Ramadan.
Good evening and welcome to the programme. I'm Alice Bandu-Kravi. It's been nearly 8 years since the Grenfell Tower fire, in which 72 people died. Today, the government accepted all 58 recommendations from the public inquiry into what happened. Several organisations are to be investigated over the disaster, and a new building safety regulator will be created. But survivors and the bereaved have questioned why it's taking so long for meaningful change to be made to prevent a tragedy like this happening again. Aisha Baksh has this report.
On behalf of the government, the British state and those responsible, I am very sorry.
An apology and a promise.
The government accepts the findings of the report and will take forward all the recommendations.
The government's response to the Grenfell Tower inquiry report has been long awaited. The public inquiry's recommendations were made to prevent another Grenfell, but many bereaved and survivors are still asking, why is justice and change taking so long? Ed Defan is a survivor of the fire and with the group Grenfell United.
All of these recommendations need to go out for further consultation, further review, and it's very painful for us to understand how long that process is going to take.
72 people died as a result of the fire, and some of their families were in Parliament to hear the announcement. Many have joined with groups such as Infected Blood and Post Office Victims to ensure public inquiry recommendations are meaningfully implemented.
We need to keep pushing to make sure that they're going to implement all the stuff that they said. It's going to be a massive job, but we need to make sure that we keep challenging them.
For some who work with the fire safety and building industry, it's feared further regulations may prove difficult.
There is a lot of change there, a lot of things that sort of a single line recommendation actually could lead to months or years worth of work and significant investment. So I haven't seen yet how the implementation plan will work, where the funding will come from to actually make some of these key changes.
There's been a lot of mismanagement, deliberately not passing things through. Whether that's going to change and government is going to be told things they don't want to hear will make a big difference. But at the end of the day, everybody, wherever they are, must ensure that the safety of people living in their dwellings is of paramount importance.
And over in North Kensington, local residents say they must also still wait for closure.
The conversation with the community is not over. We're still going to have to monitor what's going on. So that means the end is not really as close as we'd hoped.
Well, no one's been held to account, and this is obviously justice for Grenfell is probably the most important thing for this community.
There needs to be some serious charges put to them people for us to really get any closure at all. At the moment, there is no closure.
This just goes on interminably. It's glacial. It's impossible to be free. And you know, we're kind of getting into the realms now of another Hillsborough, where the change and the end comes a generation after the tragedy and not immediately. And yeah, you know, you allied that to the fact that there haven't been any criminal prosecutions yet, and it just feels interminable. It just feels it's going to go on forever.
Well, the changes, the recommendations and all the regulations we heard about today could in theory take some time to be implemented. And in the meantime, bereaved and survivors 8 years on from the fire are still waiting for individuals and organisations to be held accountable over what happened. Aisha Baksh, BBC London.
Well, let's get more on this now with Carl, who's here. Carl, we heard some strong words from the government today. Will their action match those words?
Yeah, question that was being asked there in Aisha's report, wasn't it, by some of the bereaved and the survivors of Grenfell. It is the key question, because many of those people will say, look, we've heard promises from governments before. We've heard them say we're going to change the regulations. Not really happening quickly enough. And remember, we're coming up to 8 years since the Grenfell fire. What the government did say today, though, and it was a very fulsome apology from Angela Rayner. Very sorry, she said. She started off her speech by saying that. They said they will meet the 58 recommendations of the Phase 2 inquiry and also push for this new construction regulator, a single body to oversee all of the way that the building industry works. So strong condemnation, actually, of many of those involved in what had happened. And this from the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner.
The inquiry uncovered serial incompetence and negligence, complacency and inaction, and blatant dishonesty and greed. The organisations that failed included the government and regulators. The department that I now lead, which failed to act on known risks and ignored, delayed or disregarded matters affecting the safety of life. And the manufacturing companies, including Arcanic, Kingspan and Celotex, whose products were used to refurbish the tower. The report found that they acted with systemic dishonesty, and they missold and they marketed them. Their disgraceful mercenary behaviour put profit before people and exploited the regulatory regime to evade accountability with fatal consequences.
We heard Angela Rayner there mention 3 firms, but that's not the full extent of who the government will be looking into, is it?
No, it's not. They said they're going to be looking at 7 firms, although we understand one of those has since gone into liquidation, and expanding their look at kind of how the industry is regulated. But as you heard, real concerns over when the changes are going to happen. The government saying it's most likely they're going to happen around 2028, so another 3 years to wait. Something picked up on by Peter Apps, an Inside Housing journalist.
We all know that when things are politically urgent, they can get through the system faster than this. And, you know, I particularly look at the publication of a construction products green paper and feel quite disheartened because the length of time between a green paper and actual implementation is measured in years. And, you know, we've already had years. So I'd prefer to see, you know, reforms that were closer to implementation than we have today.
So questions raised by Peter Apps around the timeline. What's been the broader reaction to today's announcement? Yeah,
we've had something from the Mayor, Sir Sadiq Khan, today saying he wants quick action. He wants the government to move quickly on regulation, and he wants all of those firms involved in anything to do with the fire banned from ever having public contracts, which I think is where the government is going to move with that. But I think a sense also, as you heard reflected in Aisha's piece there, that what the community really need is justice, someone to pay for what has happened. The local MP is Joe Powell.
I think today is obviously a moment to remember the 72 people who lost their lives and the bereaved and survivors and the wider community. Many of them were at Parliament today, and we just had a meeting with them, with the Deputy Prime Minister, where they reiterated their concern about the slow pace of criminal justice. So we will certainly be looking to support them as much as we can to get that justice they deserve.
And that justice, Alice, may have to wait a while. We know the Met has got 150 officers still involved in the Grenfell investigation, one of their biggest ever investigations, but they've said they won't hand over prosecution papers to the Crown Prosecution Service until next year, and the prosecutions will be sometime after that.
Certainly going very slowly. Carl, thank you. Lots more to come, including remembering the darkest days of the Blitz with rarely seen images from the London archives. And how central London's lighting up tonight ahead of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander has said that she believes in airport expansion ahead of her decision on whether Gatwick can get a second runway. She said the government will do all it can to support the sector and take the brakes off growth. But some campaigners opposed to the expansion of Gatwick Airport have staged a protest this evening. Oliver Whitfield-Mircic sent this report.
With just less than 24 hours to go until the Transport Secretary is set to reveal whether Gatwick's second runway will go ahead, campaigners have been gathering close to the runways, urging her not to allow that to happen. Joining me now is Peter Barclay, who's the chairman of the Gatwick Airport Conservation Campaign. What are your main concerns?
Well, locally they are the infrastructure impacts, and of course on a greater scale is noise and air pollution. Globally, of course, climate emission, carbon emissions, climate change.
But today we've heard from the Climate Change Commission saying that sustainable air fuel could go some way into allowing further flights to take off.
The amount of sustainable aviation fuel is not sufficient to meet what the demands are here. The estimates put in by Gatwick as to how much would be needed have been shown to be grossly inaccurate, and they haven't been costed properly into their application.
Thank you very much. That was Peter Barclay there joining us. Gatwick Airport says that if it is given the go-ahead, then there will be thousands of jobs that are created. We've had the clearest indication yet that the Transport Secretary is likely to approve the airport's expansion, though yesterday she said that she wasn't a flight-shaming eco-warrior. Bear in mind, there could be conditions that are attached to the development consent order. That could mean that Gatwick Airport has got to increase the number of journeys that are made by public transport to get people to the terminal. Gatwick Airport has already warned, though, that any changes to its planning documents could mean that the whole scheme is unfinanceable.
That was Oliver Whitfield-Mircic with that report. And the government's expected to make an announcement on this tomorrow. Our transport correspondent Tom Edwards is here. So, Tom, are these positive messages from government unexpected?
Well, it feels like it's going to be given the go-ahead, doesn't it, this second runway? That's what the mood music is certainly suggesting. But I think the devil is definitely going to be in the detail. As Oliver hinted on there, they could put environmental protections, planning protections around the second runway, and he mentioned there they could do things like making 54% of passengers get to the airport by public transport. Now that's going to be a big challenge for an airport that's in the middle of Sussex. If we just have a look at the plans, it is really interesting. What they're doing is they're using the emergency runway and they're converting that into a takeoff only runway. It'll increase passenger numbers from 43 million to about 80 million. It's going to cost £2.2 billion. There'll also be upgrades to the local roads, that kind of thing. As you said there, we are expecting this decision tomorrow. Looks like she is keen on it, but I would definitely keep an eye on the strings that could be attached to it and how challenging they're going to be. OK, let's talk briefly about Heathrow Airport, because it posted record results today. Do you think that's going to affect its application for expansion? Well, Heathrow Airport certainly thinks so. So its results today were big. They said that it was their busiest ever year, 84 million passengers, profits down slightly to 3.6 billion. So that's a lot of money that they make from that airport in the west of London. They're now focusing on expansion, and in their statement they said, and this is crucial, they said over the next decade we will be making the largest private investment in the UK's transport network, which will modernise Heathrow and unlock capacity for growth. I think it's also worth mentioning that Gatwick are at the end of this planning process. Heathrow are just at the beginning, and so there's going to be lots of twists and turns when it comes to the third runway at Heathrow. And also Gatwick are probably going to face a judicial review. Plenty more airport expansion stories for you to look at, Tom. Thank you. Time for a quick look at some other stories now.
The Met Police does not always do enough to find missing children. That's according to a review by His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, which found that although improvements were required, the Met had made positive progress in the way it tackles the exploitation of children. The force said it was investing heavily in resources and training. And staying with the Met Police, it has applauded the bravery and quick thinking of an officer who single-handedly tackled a knifeman in Lewisham. PC Morgan Younger managed to take Fitzgerald Carty to the ground and disarm him whilst calling for further assistance. Mr. Carty was trying to stab another man and has been sentenced to 30 months in prison. And the public will be able to take a tour of St James's Palace for the first time, including the places where King Charles was formally declared and proclaimed monarch. The Royal Collection Trust said tickets were available for tours in small guided groups in April and May from their website at a cost of £85 per person. The Trust said prices were benchmarked across the sector and reflect the unique and special access visitors will experience. A huge sinkhole that appeared last week and swallowed parts of a street in Surrey could take a year to fix. 30 homes close to it were evacuated in Godstone just over a week ago. People living in 24 of them have been told they may not be able to return home for many months. Sarah Smith has the story.
When the road fell away last week, it was soon clear it was going to take some time to fix it. But last night's news still came as quite a shock. At a packed public meeting held in the village, residents were told it could take a whole year. It's left those who've had to evacuate their homes wondering what the future holds.
With a baby, we have slept in the last 4 nights in 3 different places.
He's not alone. Sarah Lewis has just had to move her family again. She described the atmosphere at last night's meeting.
It's the first time we've heard that it could be a year to find the cause of the sinkhole, and the council on numerous occasions have promised to keep the displaced residents informed before anybody else. So to hear that at a public meeting was frustrating.
Carol Ward lives just outside the cordon. She set up a Facebook group to offer support to those worst affected and was also at the meeting.
They're very upset, sometimes angry and a little bit traumatised as well, because it's a terrible experience and they feel that they probably haven't been listened to or as supported as much as they could have been.
It's more than a week now since we saw those last people being evacuated from these flats, which now stand empty, and these tall fences have been put up to keep everybody out, keep everybody safe. There's no clue yet as to when or if they'll be allowed home. With families in hotels, Airbnbs or staying with friends, many are relying on the council to find them accommodation after some insurance companies refused to step in.
If something like a sinkhole hasn't actually gone onto your property or directly affected the structure of it, it's unlikely that your insurance company is going to pay out for anything other than just a few weeks.
And with the whole high street still closed, businesses here continue to suffer. This builder's yard would normally have cars and vans coming and going all day.
It's like COVID, only it's a bit worse than COVID, because COVID we had people coming in and out by appointment. At the moment, where the traffic is down there in the road, we can't even do appointments.
Investigations are still underway into the state of the ground under these homes, into how far the old sand quarries beneath them stretch. And until that's finished, repair work can't even get started. Sarah Smith, BBC London, Godstone.
Images of Londoners living through the darkest days of the Blitz are being shown at the London Archives. Rarely seen original artworks, photos and personal diaries highlight the stories of the men and women who lived through the Second World War. Anna O'Neill went along to see and hear some of those personal accounts.
Oh gosh, yes. Oh.
A trip down memory lane for Mark and his partner Marilyn, who both survived and remember the Blitz.
I do remember all the bomb sites.
They're here at the London Archives for a behind-the-scenes look at a new free exhibition about the war years.
So you can see St Paul's
in the middle here with all the destruction sort of around.
Yes,
the purple
I remember all of that.
German bombers rained fire and high explosive bombs in their most savage attack on London.
My first recollections date from, I think, early 1941. And I was sitting on the floor playing with my toys, and I looked up at my mother and my grandmother, and they were both sitting upright with a horrible look on their face, which I now realise was fear. And it was from that time onwards I really became aware of what was going on with the bombing, hearing the whistles of the bombs coming down, the engines of the enemy aircraft overhead, and the ack-ack guns firing away.
We thought we would take the opportunity to look in the archives and think about maybe some of the stories of Londoners, how Londoners would have seen the city that was being devastated around them, how they would maybe have lived their lives, what they may have found that they weren't expecting.
Now in his late 80s, the Second World War and its aftermath defined Mark's life. He worked for the ambulance service and bought and restored his own World War II ambulance, which had also survived the Blitz, and which he donated to Whitewebb's Museum of Transport last year. And so he's got memories of his own to share.
One evening we were sitting in, and we heard one of these V1s coming, and it got louder and louder and louder, and we were sitting there, and the motor cut out, and there was that sort of pregnant silence. But worse than that, we heard the wind rustling over its wings. And even now, just thinking about it, you know, the fear. Yeah. And there was this almighty explosion, and all the back windows of the house blew out.
This free exhibition by the City of London Corporation at the London Archives near Farringdon runs until the end of October. So do you think we've still got that Blitz spirit in Britain?
I think if it really came down to it, yes, it would materialise, I'm sure it would.
Anna O'Neill, BBC London.
Now we're just days away from the start of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, a time of fasting, reflection and prayer for around 1 in 10 Londoners. And for the third year running, central London will glow in the haze of thousands of Ramadan lights. Laxmi Gopal is near Piccadilly Circus for us now. Laxmi.
We're the first ever lights to be lit.
Yes, I'm here surrounded by many people ready to look up to the night sky. At the moment, the mayor is speaking. That's what they're applauding at the moment because the lights haven't been switched on yet, but they are soon to be illuminated to mark the upcoming start of Ramadan. That's when Muslims observe fasting from sunrise to sunset, and then an evening meal to break that fast called iftar. And actually, incidentally, nearby, there's been a royal visit connected to that. The King and Queen have been at a restaurant in Soho, helping to pack up dates for iftar in hospitals, to be sent to hospitals during Ramadan. King Charles and Queen Camilla were at the Darjeeling Express, that's a restaurant off Carnaby Street, and they were meeting key women from the British Muslim community, including the owner of the restaurant, Asma Khan.
It wasn't just this, nice to meet you. You know, it was this kind of real interest in what they did. And, you know, when he went to get the biryani, and he was like, I want to eat it, I don't want to pack it. I was like, so sweet. And just, it's for us, all of us feel seen. Just before Ramadan, the King and Queen come in, they pack dates, which for us is so sacred in Ramadan. What happens with this biryani is that it goes to hospitals, and in the whole of Ramadan, the entire profits of this restaurant is given to hunger charities.
6, 5, 4,
and here we are for the light switch on. And there we go, there's a perfect timing there as the lights are switched on. The third year that Ramadan lights have been switched on in central London to bring a bit of light in the gloom, in the darkness. And of course Ramadan hasn't started yet. It's expected to start on Friday evening, depending on the sighting of the moon, but you're able to come along here like everyone else to enjoy the sight of these lights lighting up the sky, as they have done for 3 years. This is the third year of that happening. So Alice, you can come along and see for yourself.
Lakshmi, well done for struggling with the sound there. Very noisy in the West End, but lovely looking lights. Which brings us to this week, which sees 7 planets visible in the evening sky in a phenomenon known as planetary parade. The rare sight won't be seen again till 2040. You'll need a telescope if you want to see the full display, but 4 of the planets, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter and Mars, will be visible to the naked eye. And if you have any photos of the lineup that you'd like to share with us, then send them to Hello BBC London at bbc.co.uk. That's Hello BBC London at bbc.co.uk. We'd love to see your pictures. Which brings us to the weather with Sarah, Keith, Lucas. Is it good planet watching weather?
Well, we should see some clearer spells at times tonight, tomorrow night as well, especially. So yes, some drier, clearer weather on the way. But actually the weather today has been pretty dramatic for some of us. We've had some downpours and we ended the day with some of this cloud, Momatus cloud that you can see here. It forms on the underside of thunder clouds, cumulonimbus clouds. So really dramatic, and particularly when the sun sets. Scenes a bit like this captured by lots of our weather watchers a little earlier on today. Now that quieter weather is on the way. So into tomorrow, we've still got a little bit of cloud, could be the odd spot of rain through the morning, but things will tend to brighten up through the course of the day. We've got quite a bit of clouds still out there at the moment, bringing us some showery rain over the next few hours, and then a slightly quieter, drier spell for a time. But later in the night, into the early hours of Thursday morning, another area of cloud, a batch of showery rain moves its way through, and it is going to be another fairly chilly night. So temperatures down to around about 1 or 2 degrees for some of us to start the day tomorrow. So we do start with the cloud, the outbreaks of light patchy rain possible at first, should clear off towards the east, that northwesterly breeze just helping to break up the clouds. So by the afternoon, a brighter picture. So some clearer spells, some sunshine by day, temperatures only about 8 to 10 degrees, and we should have clear spells as the sun sets. Just after sunset is the best time for catching a glimpse of that planetary parade. Now, clear skies overnight into Friday, so another really cold one. We're likely to see a touch of frost as we head into Friday, possibly some mists and some fog patches as well. They should lift and clear. So Friday, not a bad day once any mist and fog clears away. Yes, it's going to be chilly, but there'll be some longer spells of blue sky out there. Not going to lift the temperature very high, still up to around about 9 or 10 degrees. Heading through the weekend, then again, the chance of some mist, some fog on Saturday should burn away, some sunshine, and most of us will see a little bit more sunshine into Sunday too. Yeah.
And that will be very welcome. Sarah, thank you very much. That's about it from me. You can, of course, keep up to date with all the latest stories on our website, including the details of our Make a Difference Awards. But for now, from all of us here, have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.